Hello, I'm Rabbi Spivak, and welcome to Ask Rabbi Spivak. This question comes from Los Angeles, California. Dear Rabbi Spivak, my son is hooked on drugs. I don't know where he went wrong or where I went wrong. What can I do to help him back to health? My dear friend, because there are so many negative forces in the world with a jungle of wrong roads, you have to be vigilant with your kids. The problem is that college, which was supposed to be a marketplace for ideas, sadly has turned into a propaganda tool which has become effective, as evidenced by a front-page story in the New York Times, which talks of many young Jews turning on Israel. And young Jews turning against their own people in the post-Holocaust era is absolutely unthinkable. What happened? How does it happen? It happens because number one, in college, which used to be that a student was praised for coming up with positive alternate ideas. Now, very often, there is an underlying tone set by the professor, not in all cases, but in many. And that tone is, this is what's going to fly. This is the norm. And this is it. I can tell you, from having been a chaplain at Fairleigh Dickinson University myself, you should know that there are foreign countries that deliberately send their male students to colleges to seduce the Jewish girls and get them to think that Israel is a robber state and a state persecuting the Palestinians. This is the idea that goes among some of the students, and this is the idea that very well is sometimes pushed by a professor who knows his chair at the university is sponsored by an anti-Israel country. That's what kids face, and it's easy to sell out. It's easy to become anti-Israel, to turn against your own people. Because the memory of the Holocaust to them, to young Jews today, is like the Peloponnesian Wars and some dusty backroom archaeology building with cobwebs over it. It doesn't mean what it used to mean. Doesn't mean what it did to those of us who had teachers and rebbes with numbers on their arms, and therefore see the beauty of the state of Israel, which gives the right of all its minorities to be even a Supreme Court judge, to take part in government. And these young people, sadly enough, are letting their own country float away in Israel and turning to the countries that don't give their citizens any rights, citizens being in quotes. How does something like this happen, you ask? The answer is we have to turn back to the pages of history. When Adolf Hitler first came up, he appealed to the Hitler Jugend, the Hitler Youth. And if you see any of the films of the day, you'll see an interesting thing. They looked at him as a savior. as their Führer, the leader. Eventually they swore allegiance not to Deutschland, not to Germany, but to Adolf Hitler himself. And the look, you see the young girls and boys running to him as he stands ready to give a speech. The look of ecstasy in their eyes. That's how vulnerable youth are. That's how the stream of evil ideas can captivate their souls and their hearts. So when you see a young person, you don't know what's going on in his or her head. You don't know who's trying to seduce them intellectually. And that's why you have to be vigilant. And that's something that hasn't been done nearly enough. At the end of the war, these young people who looked up to Adolf Hitler, when Hitler knew full well that the Soviets in the East and the Americans in the West were going to defeat him and crush him, he could have surrendered to save their lives. They adored him. They adored him. But no, he said they had to fall to the last man. The last pictures we have of Adolf Hitler show him as he's going down to the bunker, pinching the cheek of a 12, 13-year-old boy who is certainly going to die in front of the Russian tanks that were coming in. But this boy was seduced because such is the susceptibility and vulnerability of youth. That is why the boycott, the BDS movement, wants to put sanctions and divest from Israel and boycott it. We look at that movement and we say, why? Why are Jewish youth sometimes involved in it? Because they have been seduced. And you think that this man, who was responsible for the death of 50 million people in World War II, 50 million, you say, how could he possibly seduce the German youth? A man who was that evil? It's impossible, you say? Watch this. I'm Rabbi Spivak. Seid gesund lehitraot, Shalom al Yisrael. And most of all, my friend, Chazak.